This is Dr. William Snedlin coming to you from With One Accord Ministries with a video which is in part response to several questions we have had concerning Masonic auxiliary body known as the Orders of the Eastern Star. And this group has been around for many years. In fact, it dates back to the 19th century. And before I get into it, I want to just explain concerns that people have. The Order of the Eastern Star, which is if you've ever looked in it or if you've ever been a member of it, it appears outwardly to be a relatively benign Christian organization. I mean, they sing hymns, they talk about the cross and all this stuff, but it's all kind of superficial. I'm going to go into now what the problem is. But first of all, I want to take you to a passage from the book of Acts, chapter 7, where it says, and this is verse 43, "Yea, ye took up the tabernacle of Moloch, and the star of your god Remphan, figures which ye made to worship them, and I will carry you away beyond Babylon." Now, that's, of course, from Stephen's sermon to the people, the Jewish people at that time, who some of whom were becoming believers and some of whom were opposing him. And he was quoting basically from the prophets. And he ended up, being, of course, stoned to death for saying that by the Pharisees, and Paul, before it was Paul, his name was Saul at that time, was standing there consenting to that stoning, we are told. Well, anyhow, here's the point. What is that star? What is the star of your god Remphan? And, of course, this is a big controversy, and we're going to do a whole video on that later. But I just want you to explain, I want to explain to you, because this, in a way, is part one of a different teaching, that the whole identity of this star is critical to understanding the dangers of the Eastern Star.
So we're going around, we're going back and forth in these episodes, in our discussions here, trying to talk about the relevant facts of what's going on. And ultimately, as we're talking about the Order of the Eastern Stars here, as I do my research, it's so strange to see how the esoteric orders, the fraternal crafts, ultimately, or the Masonic orders are ultimately going to be there to find different mechanisms, establishing Mormonism, right? Establishing the Jehovah's Witnesses cult too. As you look historically, there it is. Freemasons at the founding, at the establishment of that. And you can see here, the Order of the Eastern Stars is going to be a female version of Freemasonry that permits women to come in when they're excluded from the actual brotherhood of Freemasonry. They're allowed to become part of the Order of the Eastern Stars. Isn't that nice? But of course, the Order of the Eastern Stars is established by Rob Morris. Interesting. So the powerful esoteric chapter of female Freemasonry is started by a man. Okay. Hey, if you want to run with that, that's your thing. But that's what we're seeing in this country. We're seeing the establishment of a kind of sad and sick feminism in this country that ultimately leads women to this, not empowerment, but debasement and a general destruction of womanhood as we have known it. And we can't call this a maternity at any kind of level because it's apparently run by men and run by Freemasons. And what is the consequence of having a powerful female secret society in America started in the 1840s and 1850s? What has been the consequences for womanhood and for women in this country since then?
All right. Saying that, let's get into this. The Eastern Star is a Masonic auxiliary body, to be brief. And it's got basically 7 or 8 or 9 major officers, the worthy matron, the worthy patron. And it cannot function, understand this, without a Mason being present as the worthy patron or the worthy associate patron. I was in the Eastern Star as an associate patron, so I went through these things. I know what they're about, and it looks pretty benevolent, but like many things in cults and the occult, it is not. And I want this to be a warning. If you are a woman, or for that matter a man, because there are men in the Eastern Star who are involved in this, you need to get out of it and you need to repent.
Has it gotten better for women? Because I'm looking at these women who are running around here with weird man haircuts, who are wearing man pants, who are trying to act like men, who've had, if they could even find it in themselves to be impregnated by a man at any time, have aborted all those babies. have refused to have any kind of marriage contract where they could have a man in their life helping to finance and establish their lives and give them the life of leisure and intellectual development and further education and the furtherance of female power, which you think that the Order of the Eastern Stars would be about establishing female power. Not so much. It doesn't seem like female power is very well established here. It seems like that we've lost female power. It seems like the feminism, this quote-unquote feminization of America has led to the misery index for women going way up. Do you think these women who have had all these abortions over time are going to somehow thank men and thank the world and thank America and thank the Order of the Eastern Stars for bringing them to this place of clarity where they murdered all their children instead of raising them and having them hugging them and bringing them flowers on Mother's Day, right? Does the Order of the Eastern Stars, does it reinforce Mother's Day, or does it just leave these women with motherless, empty nests of misery trying to act like men? It's very strange. What is going on? What power of persuasion and mesmerization? What mesmerizes and hypnotizes all these women into thinking that they can become men? If they're Samantha, they're called Sam now. They get a big old Popeye tattoo on their forearm, and you know what I mean? And they wear Calvin Klein jeans and stuff. They're not ladies anymore. There's no semblance of womanhood left. It's the total destruction of femininity on every level. It's a total rejection of their own womb, by which the entire world, the entire universe of history of humanity has been born into the world through the womb of women, but now they would just cut it off, throw it on the ground like some old dirty leaves or something. Cut off their boobs. What power of persuasion and total mind control and brainwash could cause women and their beautiful, voluptuous bodies, their beautiful breasts, just want to cut them off? Why don't you just cut off your own fucking head? So I'm not sure what the Order of the Eastern Stars has ever done for the world or for women, but apparently not much.
Okay, so every Eastern Star meeting has a Mason presiding over it. That's a big problem in and of itself, because there is an issue. I just want to talk about this briefly and parenthetically. There is an issue of headship here. Because even though obviously none of the women in the Eastern Star are Masons, they are often either married to Masons or they're sisters or nieces or some such of a Mason. You can't really be in the Eastern Star, at least this was the case when I was in it back in the 80s, unless you were a relative of some kind of a Freemason. And however tenuous that relationship might be, if you became a member of the Eastern Star and took the oath and all that, because you do all that. It's somewhat similar to the Masonic Lodge. And again, we'll talk about that more in a few minutes. But the point is, you come under the headship authority of that man that is the worthy patron, quote unquote, of that chapter of the Eastern Star. And he in turn is under the authority of his worshipful master at the Masonic Lodge. In fact, almost all Eastern Star bodies that I'm aware of or was aware of back then meet in Masonic lodges on the off night when the regular Masonic meetings aren't taking place, because they might have meetings 3 or 4 nights a week, and one of those might be the Eastern Star. So there's this whole headship thing. It's like even if you're a good Christian woman, you go to church, you try to keep the commandments, do all this good stuff. Maybe you're even filled with the Holy Spirit, whatever. Saved by the blood, that's all fine. But when you walk into that lodge door and you kneel at the altar of the Eastern Star, which as we'll see is actually a very satanic symbol, and swear oaths on that altar, you come under the headship authority of the Masonic Lodge. And the ultimate Elohim deity of the Masonic Lodge is Baal, or Lucifer, or Satan, if you prefer.
Very strange. The Order of the Eastern Stars is a fraternal organization. Oh, it's not a maternal one? I thought it was for ladies. Okay. An organization that is based on principles and values that are derived from the Bible, but is not a religion. Oh, interesting. So you're using the concepts of the Bible, but not in a religious way. Interesting. Now, one of the concepts in the Bible is Lucifer. One of the concepts in the Bible is sin and destruction and damnation. Those are biblical concepts. And which concepts are we using? Members share a belief in a supreme being, not necessarily in the God of Abraham, Isaac, and Jacob, right? So if you believe in the principles of the Bible that are in the Bible, but not for religion, and you don't believe in the God of Abraham, Isaac, and Jacob, but you just believe in some other supreme being, well, who in the hell would that be? I mean, we don't have to be Sherlock Holmes to piece together the mystery here, right? Their values are based on the stories from the Old and New Testaments. Well, in the Old Testament, it's all about Babylon and Egypt and sorcery and the black magic from the paganism of long eras of esoteric magical sorcery, right? That's what's in the Old Testament. In fact, the God of Abraham, Isaac, and Jacob was the only God, the Most High God, who set up his people alone, Israel, in Jerusalem and Mount Zion. And he set up his people and his religion and his establishment of faith against the entire world, against the supreme being, and against all the ancient mystery religions of Egypt and Babylon and the Greeks, of all of them, right? And Persia, let's not leave them out. Because at the time of the Greeks, the city of Jerusalem and the religion of Yahweh wasn't looking too hot. They'd been pretty well destroyed and pretty well scattered and mangled, right? So we're using the Bible, but not for religious means. We're worshiping a supreme being, but we're rejecting the God of Abraham, Isaac, and Jacob, and the Jews, the Zionists, the state of Israel, the Rothschilds, oh God, or oh supreme being. I mean.
So, where did this all start? Well, for whatever reason, there was a guy named Rob Morris, Dr. Rob Morris, who decided to start something like this, a woman's auxiliary for the Freemasonic order, because women, of course, are not allowed to be Masons. And basically, he started putting this together in the mid-1800s. And he was a past Grand Master of a Masonic Lodge. So this guy was a big muckety-muck in the Masonic body. And at first he was called, in fact, the Poet Laureate of Masonry. So this guy was no, Masonic lightweight. He was a very important individual in American Masonry. Now, in 1868, this fellow, right after the Civil War, this fellow got to know Robert McCoy, who was probably one of the most influential non-Scottish Rite Masons in America. And in fact, he became a publisher. A lot of the Masonic books you see are to this day published by McCoy Publishing, which was his outfit that he started. And he transferred the authority for the Eastern Star onto him, because he was this McCoy guy was such a bigwig in the Masonic body nationally, it really took off. And I'm not going to get into all the details again, as I was saying. However, let me just explain. If you go to the Eastern Star organization, you will see that it has a floor plan very similar to the Masonic Lodge, except in the center of it there's this giant pentagram, this giant 5-pointed star. And then up on the eastern end of the, the lodge room, or the chapter room, is a high place, a dais, or whatever you want to call it, where the worthy patron and the worthy matron sit. But around the star are these 5 stations, these 5 star points that are represented by officers, female officers in the lodge, or the chapter. And then in the center of this 5-pointed star is the altar. And the 5-pointed star has 5 colors to the 5 points. And around this altar are these women represent 5 characters out of the Bible. These are Ada and Esther, Ruth, Martha, and then Electa. Now you might say, well, who the heck is Ada? Well, Ada is the name that they made up for Jephthah's daughter.
The order's stated purposes are charitable, educational, fraternal, and scientific. 1850. Really into science back then, huh, guys? Maybe try to invent the wheel. That would be science. So here we'll go over to the Gutenberg.org. Gutenberg.org, I love that. Huge resource for information. That's what we desperately need, guys. In the info war, guess what we're lacking in? Information, right? If we weren't lacking in information, it wouldn't be an info war. Ritual of the Order of the Eastern Star, Project Gutenberg. In the Order of the Eastern Star, there are only 5 degrees known. Ada the daughter, Ruth the widow, Esther the wife, Martha the sister, and Electa the mother. The name of the order and the name of its degrees and modes of recognition are unchangeable. So let's read down here through some of their bylaws. Its obligations are based upon the honor of those who obtain its secrets and are framed upon the principle that whatever benefits are due by Masons to the wives, daughters, mothers, widows, and sisters of Masons, reciprocal duties are due from them to the brotherhood. That the obligation of our order, voluntarily assumed, is perpetual, from the force of which there is no release. The ballot for candidates for the degrees or membership must be unanimous, without debate, and kept inviolably secret. The degrees cannot be conferred unless a brother in good standing shall preside. He shall call upon the worthy matron to assist in conferring the degrees. What? So the awesome power of female Freemasonry and the feminine secret society here is totally controlled by a brother Mason in good standing who confers the degree to you. Wow. So can you imagine that in order to have feminism in this country, to have the women's right to vote, and to have the ability to allow women to reach the same place in society, the same privileged ensconcement as men throughout society, how will you allow this? You will allow that to happen through the absolute total submission and control of womanhood by selecting women who are subordinated to this secret order through the men. And we'll read it again. The degrees cannot be conferred unless a brother in good standing shall preside. He can call upon a worthy matron to assist in conferring the degrees. Meetings. The meetings of a chapter are either regular or special. Regular meetings are those held at stated intervals as prescribed by its bylaws. Special meetings are those held by appointment of the worthy matron or other lawful authority. 7 members, including one of the first 3 officers, shall constitute a quorum for the transaction of business unless the bylaws of the chapter shall be prescribed a larger number. The ballot. I love it. The ball worship, right? The ballot upon petitions for the degrees or membership can only be taken at a regular meeting. The associate conductress shall have charge of the ballot box under the direction of the worthy matron. After it has been examined by the worthy matron and associated matron, she shall present it to the worthy matron and worthy patron. Okay, so there you go. You have this control, this subtle, yet totally uniform and systematic control of the fraternity over the Order of the Eastern Stars female secret society, right?
And Electa is the name they used for the real historical female character that's mentioned by John the Revelator, John the Beloved, in his second epistle. She isn't called Electa, she is called the elect lady and her children. Okay, so we're going to get into more of that in a minute, but I just wanted to lay this out. So you've got this colorful 5-pointed star, and in the center is the altar where the woman who's an initiate will take the oath. Let's look at these star-pointed officers. Ada is representing Jephthah's daughter. Now, this is a weird story. It's one of the more baffling stories that are in the book of Judges, which is a kind of unnerving historical book anyway. And I won't go into why at this point, but there's a lot of content in there that, let's just say, it's not suitable for younger viewers. And anyhow, younger readers. Anyway, in Judges, there's this particular judge named Jephthah, and he swears an oath to the Almighty that if he can go out and win this battle, that whatever thing comes through the door of his house to greet him, excuse me, when he comes back from the battle, being the victor, he will offer that animal as a sacrifice to the Almighty. Okay, so he wins the battle, he comes home, and his daughter, his only virgin daughter, comes out to greet him singing and playing the tambourine because she's happy that he won the battle, not knowing, of course, about this dire oath. So he goes, "Alas, my daughter," blah, blah, blah. And that's the secret word of this star point. It's "alas, my daughter." And so the conventional, interpretation of this is that he basically goes and sacrifices his daughter on an altar to Elohim because he's a good Mason, quote unquote, and he honors his oath above all else, even to the point of sacrificing his child. Now, this is sick. First of all, Elohim forbids human sacrifice. Second of all, in the book, in the chapter, it says, when he explains to his daughter what's going on, in verse 37 of chapter 11, we read, and she, this is the daughter, who's not named in the scripture, said unto her father, let this thing be done for me. Let me go alone 2 months, that I may go up and down upon the mountains and bewail my virginity, I and my fellows, meaning her, I suppose, girlfriends. And he said, go. And he sent her away for 2 months, and she went with her companions and bewailed her virginity upon the mountains. And it came to pass that when she returned to her father, he did with her according to his vow which she had vowed, and she knew no man. And it was a custom in Israel that the daughters of Israel went yearly to lament the daughter of Jephthah the Gileadite those 4 days a year. Okay, now, a lot of commentators that understand Hebraic thought, and even many Christian ones, will just discard what the way the Eastern Star and some other biblical scholars take of this passage. They will say no. The discussion there about her virginity meant that basically she became a lifelong virgin. She took a vow of chastity, which would have been almost as bad as dying, because, every girl most girls want to get married, they want to have children. And she had to eschew this because, of course, the Almighty would forbid any kind of human sacrifice.
These initiated female Freemasons will be the beginning point of a total system of control over the minds of women. So you're not just going to have women come out and vote, and women have the right to the same rights and liberties as men, and to go to university and to learn, right? You have to have a system of control over the minds of womanhood. So you have women's liberation movements, you have women in radical feminist movements, all to free themselves from the chains and the imprisonment and enslavement of men, because we want abortions. We just want to run around and have sex freely with whoever we want, just like men do. We want to, so it's not the bringing up of woman to a higher noble state, into a higher level of spiritual development. No, it's the total eradication of morality and intellectual prowess in women, so that they just become another subordinated slave in the university, another subordinated slave in the hospital, another subordinated slave in athletics, right? In every level, women are only to be controlled by the worthy patron. It says right here, whether you want to have a petition for a membership, whether you want to do anything at all, you're going to present it to the worthy Freemason, and he will decide. That's what you're looking at. That's what you're looking at in this entire structure, in this entire future outgrowth of that philosophical development and that sociological and psychological development here in America and across the West, is that you have very few women who are actually breaking out of the mindset. Very few women who are the elite journalists or the elite American patriots, right, who are really fighting the good fight, who even understand it. Most of these women who are just going to get the pot pie tattoo, they're just going to start shaving their head like a man, calling themselves Sam, talking in a deeper voice. Maybe they had their forearm scraped off and formed into like a smelly, rotted old penis, right? But whatever it takes to reject womanhood. It's a total violation and a post-traumatic shattering of the psychological core of womanhood in this country. They've learned to reject their own selves in the mirror, to reject their own anatomy, to be disgusted by their own bodies. They don't embrace sisterhood or womanhood or motherhood, right? They don't do any of that stuff. Whatever the effect of the Order of the Eastern Stars has been in the world, it's been a disastrous, diabolical, and a scandalous perversion of what womanhood once were and once could have been. It's obvious that they're getting it. In the 1850s, they're getting out in front of this. They're recognizing that the world is changing, that women are going to be rising to this place, not like some kind of illiterate, ignorant children who sit in the corner and just, do macrame, right? No, these women are going to rise, so they're going to be the Marie Curies. They're going to be the highest level thinkers. They're going to be the highest level intellects. And the floodgates are broken wide open. And what do? They get out in front of it by creating a secret, esoteric society, a secret female Freemason order by which they control and start to program this idea of what women are going to be. So let's go here. Let's say it has a list. This is the list that they give you of female celebrities who are Eastern stars. And what do you think this female celebrityhood is going to do? Is it going to help reinforce the idea of women as mothers and nurturing children and holding children close to their breasts and bringing forth a new generation of children that are going and young adults who are going to be strong Americans? No, they're just going to be aborting their kids. They're just going to be going through, getting out of the limousine with no panties on. Oh, take a picture. I got no panties on. Right? This is the kind of, I got my tits out. I got my tits out, but I don't nurse any children with them. Right? I got my vagina showing, bare pussy showing as I get out of the limousine, but I don't use it to have babies with it. It's just a fuckhole. That's it. These tits just swing here so you can stare at them and you can really lust, but if I have a baby, I'm just going to abort it. It's not going to be having any milk in this tit. Is that basically what I'm seeing from the Order of the Eastern Stars? This is their role modeling and their modeling of womanhood for the world? Just this pornographic slut dolls? Is that what all these women are trying to be? They're trying to emulate what these celebrities and these Orders of the Eastern Stars women have been showing to us? They got no clothes on. They're going around with tight pants. I can see your vagina. I can see your front wedgie, dude. Put your pants on. You went outside and walked into the store with no pants. How do you get psychologically brainwashed into going around with no fucking pants on? Because you saw other people do it? What makes you do it? What makes this happen to you? You're not going around to show your vagina folds in the front of your front cleavage off so that you can have a baby. No, you just want to have another abortion. It's disgusting. The Order of the Eastern Stars is an esoteric, Luciferian control system for women, and it's totally vile and disgusting. Did I leave anything out? Let's carry on a little bit more with this concept. She shall present it to the worthy matron and the worthy patron for their ballot, and may carry it to every member present. Oh, or may place it upon the altar. Ooh, very satanic, very Luciferic. You got to have an altar. If these petitions and worthy requests are placed upon the altar, every member entitled to a vote shall approach the altar from the west between Ruth and Esther, make the sign of salutation, deposit their ballot, leaving between Esther and Martha. Wow. All right, well, we'll add this link in there. You can check it out. I could barely tolerate to read any more of this, but we have to carry on a little bit more. I love Chick Publications, right? These guys have been doing good work. Good work. Battle cry. The article, Why No Christian Woman Should Join Order of the Eastern Stars. Excerpts from Masonry Beyond the Light by William Schnoebelen. William Schnoebelen, another firm pillar, another intellectual stalwart of the book club over here with Looking Glass Forum. Without Bill Schnoebelen revealing a lot of this stuff to us about the Mormons, where would we be?
But here's the creepy thing about this, and I'm spending more time on this because I want to drive something home here. Masons are big on taking oaths, okay? It's a huge deal for a Freemason when they take these dire oaths, and believe me, they are dire, and I'll probably spend another whole thing talking about Freemasonry. We probably have a dozen DVDs out there on it, but I don't think I've actually we've done a video, on the shrine, which is part of the Masons, but the oaths that are in Masonry are truly horrible. And so they have this idea, if you break your oath, you're going to have your throat cut and your tongue torn out and your eyes pierced with daggers and your skull smote off and all this bizarre. This is in the rituals. I went through this stuff. I am not making this stuff up, even though it sounds like something out of a cheap horror movie. This is Masonry. And they work this stuff in to the Eastern Star ritual, even though they don't have those kind of horrible oaths for these women with delicate sensibilities. But the idea is still there. If you make an oath, you keep it no matter what, even if it hurts your family, even if it kills a child in your family. And believe me, let me say this. If you're a Mason, hear me. If you're an Eastern Star wife or whatever, hear me. We have had families where the daughter or the son of a Freemason or grandchild of a Freemason was killed horribly, and it was because of their parents or grandparents or whatever involvement in Freemasonry. It is literally sending your child to the fires of Moloch. Seriously. Okay, that was kind of a rant there, and I apologize, but it's true. It is absolutely true. The consequences of being a Freemason, especially to your children, are dire.
All right, we go on. Next to Freemasonry itself, our ministry is most questioned about the Order of the Eastern Stars, the Star, as it is fondly called. The OES was founded in 1868 as a woman's auxiliary for the Lodge. It is open to all female relatives of Masons and functions under the authority of the Lodge, guys. A Master Mason, called the Worthy Patron, as we were just discussing, must be present at all star meetings. There's also another Mason, an Associate Patron, usually present. Otherwise, all the offices are held by women. To ask what the Star does is a bit like asking what a Lodge does. The answer is easy, not much. However, the Star does what little it does with a tremendous amount of pomp and ceremony. Star meetings, like Lodge meetings, consist of opening the meeting with much waving of rods and banners and the singing of hymns. The officers ritually declare their stations and functions, and Grand Chapter officers are introduced and honored with tedious predictability. This can easily kill a half hour to 45 minutes. Then minutes are read, sick members are mentioned, and any items of mundane business transacted, much like any other club. If members are to be initiated, that is done, and that can take at least an hour. Then the chapter is solemnly closed with a little more ceremonial adieu, followed by a social hour. Ultimately, the chief function of a Star chapter, like a Lodge, is to make more members. Everything else is secondary to that. The Star is regarded by Masonic women as a fine Christian institution within Masonry. Classics like How Great Thou Art are sung. The motto of the chapter is right out of the Bible. We have seen his star in the east and are come to worship him. Sadly, one of the key strategies a cult uses is to play upon the common interpretations of words. Dealing with any occult club involves getting through a jungle of definitions. The cult will use words which have common meanings like Jesus or saved or well-known Bible verses, but will carefully not explain to potential members that they have been applied a subtext to these terms, a second layer of hidden meaning, an occult meaning. This is the problem with the OES. The people who put the order together back in the 19th century relied upon the familiarity with Matthew 2:2 as a common Christmas verse. However, in light of the satanic symbolism involved in the OES, we have need to look for another layer of meaning applied to the verse of Scripture, applied to that verse of Scripture. In the King James Version 1611, the text does not say Eastern Star. It says Star in the East. The term and the phrase Eastern Star has a specialized meaning in occultism. It refers to the star Sirius, which is the most significant star in Satanism. It's the star on the Muslim flag. It is sacred to the god Set. Remember Set as the evil Egyptian god who killed Osiris? Set is probably the oldest form and permutation of Satan. The Eastern Star is the star of Set. However, deadly word games are being played there. Though most women involved in the OES doubtlessly assume they are worshiping Jesus as they kneel before a huge satanic pentagram, it is obvious that his actually refers to the Set star, not Jesus' star.
But my point is this: by lionizing this character, this Jephthah, who may or may not have been a sterling individual, because a lot of these judges were sort of questionable individuals. I mean, look at Samson. The guy was the worst Nazarite ever. And yet, he's in the book of Judges. He's probably the most famous of all the judges. So, they lionized this guy because he kept his oath. Well, maybe he did, maybe he didn't. Okay, now, then the next one is Ruth. And she is the custodian of what they call the yellow ray of the star, okay? And I'm not going to get into all depth, and most of us know the story of Ruth because it's a very charming, popular story from the Tanakh. But essentially, the problem with it is it's not nearly as grave as what I was just going through with Jephthah's daughter. But the problem there is it creates an opposite effect because, as I mentioned, if you are the wife of a Freemason, you have this toxic headship over yourself. On the other hand, and this is what's kind of ironic, Ruth, who's a great heroine of the Bible, she got her covering from Boaz, who was a righteous man and who took her under his talit, literally in the book, and ended up marrying her. And of course, she became the grandmother of Melech David, King David, who was obviously the sweet psalmist of Israel and one of the greatest figures in the Old Testament. So, wonderful story. But it's kind of a flip of the fact that if you are in the Eastern Star, you are under this toxic headship of this Masonic worthy patron. Okay, the third point of the star is Esther. And again, not a lot of stuff to talk about there. I don't want to make this overly long. The fourth point of the star is Martha. And basically, the only problem that I have with the story, and of course this is when we get into the New Testament, is the fact that they go through this whole account of Lazarus being raised from the dead, and yet they never really present the gospel of Yahushua. A woman, if she was an unsaved individual or just a nominal Christian, and let me tell you something, folks, with all due respect to these various Christian churches, especially mainline denominations, Methodists and Lutherans and whatnot, Anglicans, most of those people are not saved. I would give altar calls in like a Lutheran church, and half the church would come forward for salvation because they didn't even know if they were saved. That's sick. That's the churches. This is the fault of the churches. This isn't the fault of the individual members.
In Albert Pike's commentary on this degree, we find the usual duplicity found elsewhere in the Lodge. He explains, quote unquote, to find in the blazing star of the 5 points an allusion to divine providence is fanciful. And to make it commemorative of the star that is said to have guided the Magi is to give it a meaning comparatively modern. Originally represented Sirius, the dog star, the forerunner of the inundation of the Nile. Pike readily casts aside the bland lie of the degree and confirms the blazing star is neither divine providence nor is it Jesus' star in the east that the Magi followed. It is the Egyptian idol, the symbol of Sirius. There is another critical problem in the star, a reason why no Christian woman would wish to be part of this organization. Set, Lucifer, is the acknowledged god of masonry. Thus, what does it mean for a Christian woman to be adopted into the star? She's submitting herself to the spiritual authority of Lucifer, and most assuredly, she's submitting herself to the spiritual authority of the Freemasons who run that female lodge. So she's left the authority of Yeshua and the Bible and God. She's left the authority of her husband. Now she serves in a coven under the authority of this Freemason. She may not know it, but in bowing before the star of the altar of the star, the inverted pentagram of Baphomet, she has surrendered herself, however innocently, to the gods of masonry. That will give Satan an entry point into her life, no matter how devout a Christian she may be. So we don't have to search very far to find out what went wrong in this country regarding the establishment of feminine characteristics and the understanding of the qualities and refinement of women in this nation. And you can see that at the level of the university level, at the professional level, as their roles will expand in civil society voting and becoming members of the legislature or the judiciary or the federal government, any kind of way, you can expect to find that this subversion of womanhood, this subversion of Christian women has been going on since before the Civil War. And now we can see that women have been allowed into all these different offices. Now we can see that it's not just letting women have the freedom to have the same rights and privileges as men. It's having women that are initiated by Freemasons, controlled by Freemasons, taught this duplicity and this system of lies and Lucifer worship, and then having them put up to the highest levels of total control. So these women aren't even really women anymore. They're just weaponized initiates, right? They're practitioners of sorcery and magic. They're just become Freemasons under the control of Freemasons. That's all this is. So we can't look at these Hillary Clintons and these wearing their pantsuits, and we can't take them seriously as women. I'm a woman who's going, no, you're just another initiated, esoteric practitioner of sorcery who's going into that office. No different than Billy Boy Clinton, no different than any of the other men. You're no different. That's why you see Helena Blavatsky being introduced into the lodge, and they said, Brother Mason, when they referred to her. They made her into a man, just like the Egyptians. The Egyptians would only very rarely allow certain women into their secret orders, but when they became into the secret orders, they had to wear an apron. She must wear an apron covering her private parts, her phallus that she doesn't have. She must cover it up with the all-seeing eye, the little star of Sirius over your pee-pee, because that's when you go look at the Freemason aprons that they wear. They're covering up their nudity. They're covering up their nakedness with the apron. That's what it is. It goes back to the Garden of Eden. It goes back to the esoteric traditions within the Bible that are not religion. It goes back to the worship of the supreme being in the Bible who is not the God of Abraham, Isaac, and Jacob, right? It's more associated with Allah or Baal worship. That's what you're dealing with. That's what the Order of the Eastern Stars is all about. That's why you have all these women up there in these high levels of government, within Hollywood, within hospital organizations, within the scientific or the big tech elite community, right? They're allowed in, but they're no different. They've severed their womanhood. They're willing to support women who chop off their breasts and hollow out their vagina or cut off their forearm to make a penis. They support all these ideas. They're in rejection of womanhood. They're not even women anymore. They're just weaponized initiates and practitioners of black magic, just like their fellow Freemasons. They're just like them. They're no different. They're totally vile, they're totally satanic, and they're evil. And just because they have a vagina doesn't mean that they're going to escape perdition and escape the consequences that come from the Most High God and come from the final judgment that we're going to face. So this departure and this poisoning and this incremental perversion of the Christian truth that are in that is within the goodwill of these people that are going into this system of esoteric magic. Because, God help us, these Freemasons, what do they need? They need useful women. They need weaponized dogs of war that just obey their commands. They need weaponized female apparatchiks and initiates who are going to the places that men can't go. They're going to go into the environments where men are not allowed, or to establish, we need a first female president. You think you're going to have a first female president that's allowed to exist outside of this fraternal Freemasonic control grid? No, it's not going to be allowed.
This Martha story, they carefully avoid the idea, okay, you've got to believe in the Lord Jesus Christ or you are going to go to hell. Yeah, it says he is the resurrection and the life, but the way they put it out there, they kind of make him sound a little bit like, because in Masonry, they have this whole thing, and I can't get into it, it's too long, but about the slain and risen God, Osiris, Hiram Abiff, all of this stuff. And again, I go into this in greater depth in the DVD, but suffice it to say that they basically gloss over the unique character of the Messiah, the unique fact that Yahushua is the Son of the living Elohim. He is Yah come in the flesh, and he is the only true source of eternal life and resurrection. So they don't really make that clear. And they don't tell the woman who's sitting there listening to this beautiful gospel story, but to her, it may very well be just a story. There is no evangelistic content to it. There is no besarot. There is no good news. There is no gospel, because she doesn't know how to get saved. And she can hear all these pretty stories until, they're coming out of her ears, and she could still be as lost as a golf ball on a wheat field. Because I knew all these stories, and I didn't know the real Yahushua from a doorknob. And if I had died, I'd have gone straight to hell. And because these women are presented with this false, candy-coated Christianity, or pseudo-Christianity, it's not helpful.
They're going to have their own Freemasonic women Masons. They're totally under control. Maya D'Angelo is a Order of the Eastern Stars initiate. I don't know who that is. Maybe that's important to women out there who think she's a really influential woman who really shaped the future for women. Oh, did she? Is that what she did? So I have a list here of more influential and famous Order of the Eastern Star controlled women. Freemasonic controlled women. who are, think that they're good Christians as they go down and kneel down to worship Lucifer, right? Laura Ingalls Wilder. Oh, I recognize that one. Famous Little House in the Prairie series author. Her mother, Caroline Ingalls, also. Ruth Ann Minner, Delaware's first female governor and longest serving female governor in American history. Wow, big shocker, right? When we were talking earlier, we knew we were going to go look at the list and we're going to see, she has a short haircut like a man, right? Right? We'll call Ruth Ann Minor, right? Okay. So she's got the man haircut. She's a real power governor of the Freemasons, right? Because she's a Freemason-controlled, weaponized, initiate dog. The way the dog sits. Sit, dog. Woo! Right? Total submission. That doesn't seem like feminism to me. Am I missing something? Or you get down on your knees when the worthy patron Freemason comes in the room, and then so we can't just let any old woman get in the office to become a governor and actually use her God-given, when I say God, I don't mean supreme being Lucifer. I mean the God of Abraham, Isaac, and Jacob. That's who God is. They can't let a woman who might recognize the God of Abraham, Isaac, and Jacob and use her real female intuition and her real sense of female power or feminine perceptions, right? We can't allow that. We have to have a dumbed down, subordinated, trained woman dog to heel, to have a boy haircut. And then she can be governor.
Now, the other thing, and by the way, she's the Green Ray. And we're going to talk more about this whole Ray thing in a minute. But anyway, the fact of the matter is, the last one is Electa. I kind of explained about her. She's the character out of 2 John, the elect lady and her children that the apostle talks about. And again, we don't know hardly anything about this woman except that she was a mother of children. And there's some Bible scholars that even believe that she may have been a church. You know, she may have been a symbol for a church, and that her children would be the body of the church, you know, the membership of the church. But who knows? Anyway, the point is they make this whole story up. And again, I don't want to go into depth on it about her and this and that. And again, you can go through this whole thing, and it's long. I mean, if you go through this ritual, it is as dull as dust. I mean, it wouldn't be more interesting for you to sit there and watch paint dry. I kid you not. And I had to sit through this stuff because I was a lodge officer or a chapter officer. So in any event, you can go through all this stuff and never know Yahushua, really. Now, I'm not saying there aren't many Christian women in this organization, because I'm sure there are. But it's just not there. Okay, let me get into the whole thing about the star, because I don't want this to be really long. Here's the deal. You have these 5 points of the star, and we've got these 5 biblical women, more or less, who are on the points of the star. But why are they using a pentagram? Because that's what this is. This is a giant pentagram laid out on the floor. And if you've ever seen, like, sometimes you'll see on the back of a car, you'll see like a sticker with the Eastern Star symbol on it, or you might even see it on the door of a lodge. It's an inverted pentagram, an upside-down pentagram. They call it the signet of the Eastern Star. And you'll see it is a pentagram.
Martha Griffith, American lawyer and judge, elected to the House of Representatives in 1954. She was also most responsible for including the prohibition of sex discrimination under the Title 8 in the Civil Rights Act of 1964. Oh, Martha Griffiths, wow. You really looked out for women there, didn't you? That was helpful, right? You see how the Freemasons have been doing you women? And they've been doing you, right? Why would they have a coven of women, 7 women who are supposed to be Christians, inside of a female secret society with one dude in there, one warlock over the coven? What do you think the warlock over the coven ends up doing with the women? I can't think of anything. Can you? Right. Total subordination. The whoring of you all with Madonna and Taylor Swift with her little buttocks out, with her tiny little butt sticking out. There she is. Let's all be like her. Let's all wear wedgie fucking underwear up our wazoos, right? Because the Order of the Eastern Star, female-controlled slave dogs of the Masons, said so. Don't be a slave dog. Be a real woman, a godly woman, a fierce woman. You know, there was a woman in the Bible who was able to sneak into the tent of the enemy, and she speared his head with a nail and killed him. That's what the Freemasons don't want. Real womanhood. Who else do we have who's a famous Order of the Eastern Stars who influenced the world with her strong stance? Rosa Parks, African-American civil rights activist who in 1955 refused to obey a bus driver. Of course, we all know that she was just staging that, right? They practiced that, and they went down and staged that whole event. Not that it wasn't a real protest, and she really defied the bus driver's order. She went down to a place where you weren't allowed to sit in a certain seat, and she went and sat in the seat. But it was all programmed and staged, and they recorded it. They didn't have film at the time, not necessarily, but they photographed it, and they recorded it. That's right. It's another word from our awesome sponsor, Wendy'sLimited.com. Wendy'sLimited.com is the hottest new styles in the fashion industry. You got to go check out Wendy'sLimited.com. And of course, Wendy's Boutique Limited is not sucked into all the vino and brainwash of the leftist political culture out there. We know what a woman is, and we're here to serve women. We're not here to be deceived by fake-looking dudes, but dressed like women, right? No offense. And we're here to remind you that Wendy'sLimited.com is the leader in online boutique fashion design. We have our best selection of boutique couture, awesome designer trends, and the hottest limited catalog fashion anywhere. You got to come check out Wendy'sLimited.com. Our sponsor has been very generous and keeps us going here, so please come and check out the craze, Wendy'sLimited.com. So since we pulled the pin on that particular grenade regarding Rosa Parks, we have to follow up here with some actual interesting facts and the historical reality which comes to surface and emerge after all the long decades of ignorance and mockingbird media control over the narrative and over our minds. And of course, we're not against the civil action and the street level political action that would lead to 381 days of unified protest. But what we're talking about is the fact that behind the scenes, the issue with a woman being arrested for riding the bus in a seat that was only for a white person was a case that had already taken place previously called Claudette Colvin. Right? So nobody knows about Claudette Colvin. She was arrested for this very event a long time prior to Rosa Parks. But of course, when we look at the history here, when we look in a simple Library of Congress archive, we can see here that Montgomery NAACP had been looking for a test case to challenge the constitutionality of Alabama state bus segregation laws. And they set up this individual, Rosa Parks, to be that test case. And so her act of disobedience was not by any means spontaneous. Her act of civil disobedience was not organic by any means, but it was staged. I go to another article, BaptistNews.com. She had been prepared as a leader in the local NAACP and had 2 weeks of nonviolent training at the Highlander Center in Tennessee. So we go more into it, and the point is that Rosa Parks was a Freemasonic-controlled Order of the Eastern Stars individual who they would use to be the test case and be the individual who would, under their control, who would positively affirm this new civil rights movement action on December 1st, 1955. So what we're doing is we're going to go after the psyop of Rosa Parks and point out that this entire issue was something that was seized upon by a certain power structure and was choreographed and ceremonialized into place within the American context of history as a choice that the Freemasonic Brotherhood was making. Because in 1946, if we look at the order of events, the U.S. Supreme Court case Irene Morgan versus the Commonwealth of Virginia rules that segregation on interstate buses is unconstitutional. March 2nd, 1955, Claudette Colvin, 15, is arrested for resisting bus segregation in Montgomery. Yep, it's a full 9 months before Rosa Parks was arrested for the same thing. So the point is that they decided at that time that this Claudette Colvin was not a good test case. No one remembers her story and her struggle and her bravery and courage and doing a spontaneous act of resistance and civil disobedience was not useful to them. They had to frame into place someone who was going to be the character of the kind of woman and the kind of Freemasonic controlled event that would be ensconced in history that was under their control. NAACP member Rosa Parks is arrested for resisting bus segregation, again in Montgomery, in response to the Montgomery Black community launches the Montgomery boycott. So once you force AI to tell you the facts regarding Rosa Parks, you'll find out that she was a member of the Order of Eastern Stars, a fraternal organization. That's strange, but it is a fraternal. You'd think it was a maternal. It was a women's secret society, but far from being connected with the idea that if this is about female empowerment. Of course, this is a fraternal organization. Parks' membership in the Order of Eastern Stars is specifically the Prince Hall affiliated Mitzpah Grand Chapter of Alabama is one facet of her long history. So that's kind of part of what, of course, they're going to try to if we have any questions about this, we're conspiracy theorists now. Okay. And so that shuts our mouths. That cuts us off. That relegates us to the fringe of American society once we say that we're conspiracy theorists now. So that's what AI helps to do, helps to kind of keep this whole thing under wraps. So AI will not tell you about the Order of the Eastern Stars connection unless you specifically kind of force it to answer the certain way. If we go to Jacobin magazine, jacobin.com, Rosa Parks was a 42-year-old working class seasoned organizer when the Montgomery bus boycott began. She had grown up in a family that supported Pan-Africanist and communist Marcus Garvey. She cited Malcolm X, the famous Muslim activist, as her personal hero. So this individual, Rosa Parks, is a cutout. She's a cutout to have a controlled opposition leader over this particular movement. And it's interesting that this other echelon of control overlays her personality when we realize the Order of the Eastern Stars was her particular occult sisterhood that she belonged to, that was the controlling instrument by which the Freemasonic orders of the high degrees are able to control this entire issue regarding this conflict in Tuskegee with Ku Klux Klan. Well, the Ku Klux Klan members are controlled by the same order of Freemasonic brotherhoods that controls the Order of the Eastern Stars. So that's why we have to kind of put a little bit of light into these dark corners so we can light up this issue, this whole idea of producing and choreographing a massive political outrage. And it reminds me of the George Floyd incident and just turning George Floyd into a guy in a park bench who's like an innocent bystander who didn't mean to do no wrong, right? And that's how he's played. And so that's how we can shape the character and shape the psychological conditioning around certain personalities in order to suit our own needs. So now Rosa Parks can be just an innocent bystander sitting on a bus. She didn't mean to do no wrong, but really she is a high-level occult operator. She's someone who's been trained in these communist tactics. She's someone who has familiarized herself with the radical Islamic militarization of the young people around issues of racism, right? So this whole issue of Rosa Parks being just someone that is a civil rights hero is a complete joke because she was a cutout and she was a controlled operative and a controlled female apparatchik within the Order of the Eastern Stars, within the Freemason associated acolytes and worshipers, right down on their knees, right? So that's why you have to start to look at the issue around this curated history, this carefully curated history that is a whole series of lies when it comes to the Freemasonic and occult control over America and over our cultural icons. And it comes from Jesuit universities. It comes from high-level Freemasons who are papal knights. So we have to point out that we're not against civil rights action that would lead to more freedom for more people and to a movement to end slavery and to allow people in America to see one another as equal citizens under the law with equal rights. And those are all wonderful things. But this NAACP movement is a black crypto Ku Klux Klan black supremacy racism. And that's why you're not allowed to have a national organization of European colored white people, right? You can't have a national, right? And that's why the NAACP is just the reverse side of the Klan, and they really don't have any really. Maybe there was a couple of decades there where they could exist to help people of color, but now they're just a pretentious and reverse racist crypto KKK. And of course, the whole point of them is to be a body of influenced, controlled, and psyoped, brainwashed individuals who are ultimately controlled by this lodge halls of the Mitzpah Grand Chapter of the Order of the Eastern Stars, which is controlled by Prince Hall Masonry. And so is NAACP, controlled by Prince Hall Masonry. And at the very top, those individuals are controlled by their Grand Lodge and by individuals like Albert Pike, right? And so that's where this whole thing leads towards this Luciferian and Egyptian occultism, worship of Sirius, the star in the west, Sirius, the dog star, the ancient god of Egypt and the god of the Freemasons, if you do your research correctly. And yes, Sirius appears in the west at certain times, right? So that's why you have to understand that if you're in the Far East, certain times of year, Sirius appears in the west. So it's not the Eastern star, it's really the Western star. If you understand that certain times of year, because of Earth's rotation, you can see Sirius in the western sky. And of course, that depends on where you're at on the face of the Earth. Right, so it goes into this whole issue of the nativity and who is the Eastern star and whose star is it? Now, if we're over here in the West, in the Western hemisphere of the world, over here in North America, we look into the East and we see the Sirius, the dog star, we see it in the East. But that's just based on the fact of where we're positioned on the Earth, what time of year we see it, and what part of the sky. So that becomes a derivative issue. The truth is that we have to recognize that the whole story around Rosa Parks is a manufactured lie, and we don't have any problem with people fighting back, but look at this issue with Claudette Colvin. What was wrong with her? Some sources even say this. A lot of sources say Colvin's arrest before Rosa Parks was not widely publicized because the NAACP, the Freemason-controlled Black Klan, didn't think she had an ideal figure to be in the face of the movement. Some sources even say that this choice may have been affected by the fact that shortly after her arrest, Colvin became pregnant while unmarried. She experienced many difficulties in her community and had trouble holding a job, and 3 years after her arrest, she left Montgomery for New York. Side note, Colvin has said that Rosa Parks had, quote, the right hair and the right look, unquote, to be the bus boycott's icon. So that's what I'm saying. This is all the way that the occult secret societies control this pharmaceutical, military, industrial complex in this country, and how they control events in the news media, how Rosa Parks was just a intelligence community controlled asset of the NAACP, and her mission was to put the right face and the right image on this historical tale that they were going to tell about how she was just a simple bystander on a bus, right? And so this is the way that the Mockingbird controlled press has been handling the American citizens and how they've been managing the controlled unrest within this country. Just how you can see that they have been managing BLM. They have been managing Antifa behind the scenes. These people have been allowed to exist. These civil rights direct action terrorists have been fomented and instigated and created by the Freemason-controlled power structure in this country.
Now, a pentagram is a symbol of witchcraft. And when you go through it, again, I was a Wiccan high priest for 16 years. Well, I was a Wiccan for 16 years and a high priest for 9 of those years. And in witchcraft, you originally learned there are these 3 goddesses. The maiden, which is the new moon, and then there's the full moon, who's the mother goddess, and then there's the darker, the waning moon, who is like the old crone, the old wise woman. Okay, what you learn in the higher degrees is that there's 2 other goddesses, okay? So there's actually 5, 1 for each point of the star. And those goddesses, the 2 extra ones, are the sensuous lover and also the sister. Okay, now, we have to ask, what did this guy, this Dr. Rob Morris, really have in mind when he put this stuff together? Because and I document this more fully in the DVD, but it just fits too perfectly with witchcraft. Let me explain. For example, okay, so you've got these 5 goddesses, you've got these 5 biblical characters. Each one exemplifies one of these pagan goddesses. Like, for example, Ada is a virgin, okay? She's the virgin goddess. Esther is the crone. Then you have Ruth, who is the lover. I mean, and part of that is because she comes out of a pagan culture. She's a Moabite, and there's stories about how she was actually a priestess of Moloch before she, married into Naomi's family, and that she may have been a temple harlot. Of course, then she became a devout Israelite. But anyway, and then we have Martha, who's the sister, and we have Electa, who's the mother. So we have all 5 faces of this mother goddess figure. And that's kind of a kind of coincidence, don't you think? In addition, we have the fact that the star itself is widely understood, and has been for centuries, to be the devil's star. I mean, I mentioned this thing by Eliphas Levi in the 19th century, this drawing of Baphomet. But it goes back even further than that, centuries. And the idea is if you have a pentagram with a single point up, it's white magic. If you have a pentagram with a single point downward, it is black magic. And all you have to do is go find a copy. I mean, don't actually find a copy, but look it up on like Amazon or Google or something of the Satanic Bible. You will see right on the cover there's an inverted pentagram with a goat's head in it. That's Baphomet. And it's even called the Baphomet symbol by devout Satanists, if that's not an oxymoron.
And it was already staged because the same stunt of sitting in the bus driver, famous the Rosa Parks incident, had already occurred before several times, where other instances where people sat in a seat they weren't supposed to, and they caused a civil incident over it. And all she did was come in and just perform the same action, but just quote, on in front of the journalists, in front of the reporters, so they could watch and report back in New York City, Rosa Parks. It was canned. It was staged. I knew it was staged for a long time. For 20 years, I knew it was staged. But I didn't know she was an Order of the Eastern Stars until just now when I read it. I had no idea. Who else could be an Order of the Eastern Stars, really shaping the world for women for the better? Oh, Eleanor Roosevelt. Eleanor Roosevelt, First Lady of the United States from 1933 to 1945, wife of the late Mason President Franklin Delano Roosevelt, appointed delegate to the United Nations General Assembly from 1945 to 1952. Who else? Who else is shaping the minds of womanhood out there like a good slave dog of the Masons? Who else is doing that? We know when you're a female dog, you know what they call you, right? Doing a good job. Sit down, Arfie, sit down. Here's a treat. Oh, who's next? Oh, Maxine Waters. Oh, I recognize that one. Maxine Waters, Democrat member of the United States House of Representatives since 1991, representing California's 35th Congressional District of Total Dishonor and Disgrace. Colleen Dewhurst, Canadian actress and wife of the late Masons George C. Scott. Another important and famous and influential member of the Order of Eastern Stars is Claire Barton, right? She's going to be the celebrated medical practitioner nurse there, who was going to be the founder of the Red Cross. That's an important distinction. It's an important notation that we have to make there. The founder of the Red Cross, Order of the Eastern Stars. When I look at the some of the information that they put out, some of the weird jingoistic like propaganda videos that people play on YouTube and stuff, they try to claim Martha Washington is an Order of the Eastern Stars, but of course, according to their calculations, the Order of the Eastern Stars was established in 1850, and Martha Washington died in 1803, so I'm not really sure how they get to claim her.
And, all through whether it's, the Church of Satan, the Temple of Set, or this new, Satanic Temple, I think it's called, that's so politically active right now. All of these groups, they all have this inverted pentagram as their symbol. In fact, this Satanic Temple outfit, they've actually created a 3D sculpture of the Baphomet figure that they've been putting in various state capitals under the freedom of religion clause of the Constitution. And it even has two adoring little children sitting at the feet of this satanic goat gazing up at him in rapt love or whatever, or ecstasy or something. It's really kind of sick. But anyhow, and I say this as a former Satanist. So why did this guy, this Rob Morris, pick the satanic symbol to be at the heart of this ritual group of women? Now, here's the thing. The women themselves are told, well, it says in the Gospels, we have seen his star in the east and have come to worship him. So they say, well, we're the Eastern Star because we're coming to worship Jesus, quote unquote. Well, not really. See, they're messing with these women's heads, and it's really deceptive and it's really satanic. Let me explain why. Centuries ago, way back before even the time of Messiah, the term Eastern Star did not refer to the Star of Bethlehem. Of course, this is before Yahushua was born. Instead, it referred to Sirius. It was called the Eastern Star, or the Star in the East. Now, let's look at the Gospel account in Matthew. It says, we have seen his star in the east and are come to worship him. Fine. But if you think about it, let's look at a basic geography lesson. Most Bible scholars know and will tell you that these wise men were from Babylon or from, Persia or someplace that was east of Bethlehem, where today, modern day Iraq, modern day Iran, wherever. So they were in the east, the wise men, and they saw the star. The star could not have been in the east because if the star had been in the east, they would have headed to China. Instead, they were in the east and they saw the star. And the devil loves to deceive people by, taking nomenclature like that and messing with it. So these poor women are thinking, oh, we're the Eastern Star. Oh, we're so wonderful. We're following Jesus. La-di-da-di-da. Well, no, you're not. The Eastern Star is Sirius. And Sirius is the star of Set, who is the pagan Satan, if you will, of the Egyptian pantheon. He's a dog-headed god. I've done a couple of videos about him in relation to the dog days, which we're just coming out of now. They start in July 23rd-ish, and right now this video is being made on the 1st of September. But the point is, this is a very evil, dark star.
Here's just a quick reminder, guys, of our sponsor, Wendy'sLimited.com. Wendy'sLimited.com has all the hottest new styles, all the most incredible boutique fashion designers available to you. And of course, we're all American, and we're all about making America great again at Wendy'sLimited.com, guys. Wendy'sLimited.com. So here we are back again. And I think those of us out there who are paying attention to what's going on in history, the scope of geopolitics in the world today, I think that I have your attention, right? And I have your attention now. And we're paying attention, and we're looking around, and we're learning all these new things together. And this new era podcast media generation is just so incredibly attuned to what is really going on. There's a lot of information, and it's easy to put other people's ideas and ways of doing it up against others, right? And comparing them and hearing them and seeing what people have to offer, what people have to bring to the table, and what people are really like, what we're really looking at, what we're really going for, and what is really the work that we're trying to achieve here. I'm not trying just to, attain revenues from you through some kind of different mechanisms of manipulation, different artifices of guilt tripping or whatever to try to get you to try to support us so we can stay on air, whatever that is. I don't think we need your direct help to stay on air. Like I said, we operate with a shoestring budget, and if you support us, it's really incredible. And everyone is jaw drop, and it's amazing. And we ring a little bell, and everyone gets a little piece of the $5 that comes in or whatever. And so we try to be careful and mindful of those of you who want to support. We're not saying we don't care, but that is not really the purpose of what we're doing here. And if you gave us a tremendous amount of support, I can't imagine that we would be able to do this any better. I guess we could, you could see our lovely visages, like Steve Bannon says, or when we have face for radio kind of guys, right? So there's really no need to look at our faces while we're talking. And we can go back later and abstractly put videos together and put together the imagery that goes along with what we're talking about to make our shows. We don't directly need, as it were, to make movie or to film ourselves, right? We're not some kind of narcissistic personalities where egotistically we have to drive ourselves into the centerpiece of whatever is happening here of the story, right? All we want to do is make sure that these certain subset of ideas and narratives and theories and doctrines and beliefs and historical treaties and records, really, right? So this is all just about the research for us. And, and we we all have bias. We all have the edge of our, like these guys that like to constantly, you go to InfoWars and they're just constantly just beating down on the Jews, right? The Jews can't do anything right. They can't react fast enough on October 7th. And then they can't be soft enough for the terrorists because the bombing, the carpet bombing, right? It's all about the invective, and the anti-Israel hate on is going to be built up from now on. So, that's their kind of little bias. And we have our bias, and you can see that we see that spiritually in the scriptures that we see God holding accountable these different symbolic and illustrative entities within the prophecies, right? We talk about the beast, talk about the false prophet, right? There's these over illusions of imagery about the great red dragon or the whore that rides the beast with the 10 heads, etc. Right? So there's all these different, there's 7 heads and 10 horns to be specific, right? So there are these descriptive illustrations within the symbolism that are giving away the end time narrative. They're giving away the details and the actual, the reality of what is going on. So, and the way that biblical prophecy is able to predict far in advance, because we have these writings coming down to us as they are from we have scriptures to show from the 1400s. And then when you go back historically, having very early first century scrolls, right? The Qumran scrolls, for instance, the Dead Sea Scrolls, etc., that show us that our writings and the exact etymological phraseology and the diction, the breakdown of the actual translation of our scriptures are very accurate. And you can see that it's all coming into being, right? It's all coming into place. You can look through this glass from one side or the other, but in the end, God is bringing about a fulfillment of scripture. And these guys can say, well, it's just the city of London and they know the Bible and they're going to, they're bringing all this about. And it's Lord Rothschild, and the Rothschilds are behind the Zionists, are behind bringing Israel back. And it's a pariah state. It's not a real nation. It's just a state. And so this is how you get into this controversy, the great controversy of the end time Armageddon scriptures, but ultimately going to tie in the World War III scenario on the occult side. And so these people using these terms of Zionists and using this radicalization, which is like a low-key pro-Hamas, Hamas supporters, right? Well, no, that right, isn't that what you hear these guys talking out of both sides of their mouth constantly? Owen Schroyer, you do it, you look like a retard. Okay, you look like a retard when you're up there talking about, I'm not supporting Hamas and I'm not supporting these Zionists, Israel, these Jews over there, right? They conflate the idea of the Jews and the state of Israel into this one weird garbage mentality towards There's people all over the place. I mean, I live, over here in Florida. We have, this is like Israel 2.0 over here. We have a lot of people who belong to the Jewish community who live all over Florida and are totally safe from anti-Semitism and religious hate. And maybe they agree with what's going on in the state of Israel, or maybe they don't. Maybe they go there to visit, and maybe it's their homeland, and maybe it is. Maybe Florida is their home, and maybe they're Americans. So you can't just have this blanket carpet bombing of all Jews, because then you have these guys. It was so just disgusting and like barfishly, like these cocks are over here like supporting Hezbollah and giving them aid and comfort because they said, oh, some of the devices that were exploded just hit the wrong people. So some people that weren't supposed to be hurt were hurt, right? So these are the armchair referee, like umpire, shot callers of war now, who get to decide. They call them, make the moral judgment about what's right and wrong, as these people, these ancient bloodline people who existed thousands of years before as bloodlines, as far as the descendants of Esau and Ishmael. And of course, these freaking InfoWar idiots have no idea even what we're even talking about, right?
The other thing I want to explain is that Albert Pike, who was arguably the most influential Mason of the 19th century, even more so than McCoy and this guy that started the Eastern Star, he was the supreme grand commander of the Scottish Rite of the Southern Jurisdiction, and he's actually buried in the House of the Temple in Washington D.C. And I could do a whole thing on that guy because he was a total creep. But in any event, he was a Lucifer worshiper. He worshipped Lucifer, and he was a supreme Mason over all the Scottish Rite of the Southern Jurisdiction. He was also the chief, Supreme Court Justice of the Ku Klux Klan. Isn't that wonderful? So the guy was a bad dude. And in his writings, which are widely accepted as some of the most deep, profound, philosophical works on Scottish Rite Masonry in the world, he talks about that at the center of every Masonic lodge on the floor is a blazing star. And he identifies this blazing star as the star of Set, the star of Sirius. And it's a 5-pointed star. So we're talking about the same thing here. And parenthetically, let me just say this. There's all sorts of people out there that are now saying, oh, well, that reference in Acts chapter 7 to the star of Remphan or Kayun or whatever, that's the 6-pointed star. That's the Magan Dawid, the Star of David. No, it isn't. It is the 5-pointed pentagram star, and we're going to do a whole video on that shortly. But for now, let me just make it clear that according to every occult authority, and believe me, Albert Pike was an occult authority, the 5-pointed star is evil, and the 5-point, especially inverted, and the 5-pointed star is a symbol of Set, and it is the star of Remphan. It is a star that was talked about, the star of Moloch, etc., etc. But here's the point. Pike identifies this as being the star of Set. And if this is on the floor of every Eastern Star chapel or chapter, and these women kneel at this altar right in the center of this star, and they swear an oath. And they think, when they say, oh, we have seen his star in the east and are come to worship him, that the him is Yahushua. But what if it isn't? What if it's Baphomet? What if it's Satan? Or whatever name you choose to call it. And I don't think it's a coincidence. One of the most iconic, important satanic symbols is the signet of the Eastern Star. It's like a trap. It's like a trap in which these innocent women walk in there, because 99 out of 100 of these women know nothing about the occult. They know nothing about witchcraft or any of this stuff. They just think, oh, my mother was in this, or my husband is in this, and it's just wonderful. And they're sweet, wonderful people. But they're being lured into this satanic death trap. Because let me tell you, even if these women don't have hairy goat demons showing up in their bedroom at night, that doesn't mean that there is not a spiritual impact on them and on their children and on their grandchildren. And even if for whatever reason, maybe their own devotion to Yahushua is so exemplary that it kind of slides off of them, but it's going to hit the weakest, most vulnerable members of your family if you do not renounce this stuff and repent. This is the star of Set that you are kneeling before, that you are swearing upon an altar. And remember, again, Yahushua says, don't swear oaths. And that's repeated in James. James says, above all else, my brethren, swear no oaths. And yet here these women and all these Masons swearing these oaths. Now, again, the oaths that are in the Eastern Star are pretty benign compared to the oaths that the Masons swear, but they're still blood oaths. You're still swearing on a holy Bible. They got the King James Bible. Now, talk about blasphemy. This King James Bible is laid open on this altar in the center of this satanic star. How creepy is that? And again, most women don't get this. I'm sure 99% of the women in the Eastern Star are totally oblivious to this. And that makes it all the more heinous.
So this controversy between Ishmael and the sons of Esau and the sons of Jacob and Israel and all that, and which is, the Jews are really just the tribe of Judah, which are one of the tribes, one of the sons of Jacob, who was renamed Israel because he wrestled with God. Right. So this is all just Bible stuff. And then these huge Christians, right? Isn't that what Royce White calls himself? They're huge Christians, guys, but they don't know anything about the structure of their own beliefs or the history and the legacy of the Dewey Reams, or the Reams Dewey, I guess, whatever. Bible translations, which are just completely, you might as well just read the Quran, right? They've butchered it up and changed it around and reshuffled the commandments. And now there's 9.5 commandments now. And the Sabbath day commandment, fourth commandment isn't even in there anymore, right? They just totally destroyed the word of God. And then these huge Christians over here who don't know what's going on are over here blabbering their heads off and just amping up the new right. So it's red hot invective and red hot rhetoric, political rhetoric, just to kind of get the people moving. So I'm just not buying into it. And I hear you. I feel you. I do. If I had to stand in an elevator with Kamala Harris or Donald Trump, I just can't. Kamala Harris is so disgusting and debased. I don't want to even smell her disgusting, fellatio breath. Right? And I got dragon breath. I get it. It happens. Okay. But if I got to stand in the elevator and I have a mint, the way that Kamala Harris kept trying to make eye contact with her, weird, seductive, come hither stare eyeballs, with her droopy leg, ridiculous, you're right. She kept doing the debate. Right. If you look at it, she just keeps on trying to look at him, and he just stares at the camera. He won't even look at her. Right. What good could it do to look at this woman? Right. It's just so disgusting. It's so profane. It's horrible. It's a profanity. Right. So, and then the profanity is trying to look at you and trying to eye fuck you a little bit. Excuse me. And I'm just what the hell's going on here? I can't take it anymore. So no, I don't want to be any closer to that wretched cum dump. Is that too much? Is that too far? I can edit. I'll probably just leave it in there, guys, because I don't even give a shit anymore. And we're just rocking this thing. And we're not down with like I said, the state of Israel has its own problems. It's going to have to answer for everything that it's doing to God, more directly than anywhere else. But America has been around for a couple centuries here, and we're doing really awful, right? We're doing really awful. And it doesn't do any good to try to, and I'm not with, as far as the political infighting in Washington, D.C. that just keeps pouring and dumping money to Israel and to Ukraine. I'm not with that. You know what I'm saying? I think Israel is more than capable of defending itself. It's just demonstrated that, and that's his entire thesis. So, I'm not going to attach some moral qualms to all the money that we're sending overseas to anyone else. I'm sure Israel could totally understand, the state of Israel could totally understand the reality of the fact that we have got to take care of our own nation and support our own borders and take care of our own. And hey, guys, look at the state of Texas, and the border there is so unnatural. Look at the Texas border. It's designed to collapse, right? It's some kind of crazy reverse delta pointing south into just hopelessness. There's no way to put a wall through that ridiculous border. It's not even a place you want to put a border. How long does a border last? How long does a border last? They want to do a North American Union right? A North American Union is going to make that fucking wall totally obsolete. And you know what I'm saying? And what, look, we can't have a burgeoning criminal narco state of Marxist, weird Leninist, Jesuit backed cartel power pigs running our South, our entire South of our world, right? It's just unnatural. It's not gonna last. No matter what happens, that border, whether it caves in because they just overrun it like a herd of like walking, hoarding zombies, that just like, like millions of zombies just clutch together, like, they just like come over the border and it just disappears and it's never there, Or if ultimately we, in the attempt to try to defend that ridiculous fucking reverse delta, ultimately have to take more ground and put more energy into it, spend more money on it, we're going to end up having to take a lot of that territory from Mexico anyway, because they're a failed state. Mexico is a failed state. Okay? It's what was left over from the Spanish conquistadors, like deciding whether to mass rape, mass murder, or burn the Mayan and Aztec individuals at the stake, right? That's what it's all about. And ultimately, at the end of the day, Mexico is a totally invented nation. Hey, the United States is pretty invented too, but it's invented as a holdover of the old land grabs of the old papal kings, the papal monarchs of old, trying to divide up the new world, right? And decide if they were going to somehow try to put a missionary trip to beat the indigenous peoples into submission, or whether they'll just burn them at the stake, or what will happen. But they definitely don't want democracy, right? It's just about the power of the king of Spain, or the king of Portugal, or the king of fucking Denmark, or the king of England, whoever asshole king that the Pope put into place and coronated, with his prelates and all his like special magic. Right there you go. There's the king, guys. You gotta get on your knees. He's the Axeman will listen to him, right? So that's the kind of world they want to restore. Simple, straightforward, and honest world. No more Federal Reserve debt expenditures of slowly learning how to fiscally enslave the Anglo-Saxon, Caucasian, European extract in colonialists, invaders, right? That's what all the white people are, the whiteys, right? They're the invaders. They don't belong here, right? They took some Indians' land, don't you know? So ultimately, you can see that this is just a full-out geopolitical mind war. It's the existential game of annihilation. And we have to admit that we're being hemmed in on all sides by our enemies, right? So it's going to go down. It's going to go down in America right now. These traitors, these treasonous pigs have set this up. They wanted to find a way to get in here and scrub out all these American citizens, and we're all tied to this massive debt. We're all numerically bank numbered and finger stamped, the soles of our little feet when the little ink pad was inked into the birth certificate. So we're totally tied to a live birth certificate, a certification with the state of live birth, and that live birth is tied to the debt that's assigned with those debt numbers, with the Social Security number and all that kind of shit, guys. And so, we can't get out of it, right? There's no way to run away. Like that money, that technotronic debt enslavement is on us. And now we're just totally bankrupt people. So it's all just about how these banksters and these geopolitical Vatican-led New World Order power pigs, that's what the InfoWars gurus over there will never tell you, as they just jam you with 15-minute vitamin commercials. Okay, it's not snake oil. They didn't have to take it that hard. They didn't have to take it like a kick in the balls, right? That's what's wrong with InfoWars. They're so angry. They're over there. They're so venal that you can't even get them to talk, and they're very cruel. They're very mean guys, right? They're behind the scenes, they're just very fucking mean people. Maybe they play like they have their friends, and they they have Alex Jones constantly name dropping about Trump and about Elon Musk, and they're big for their britches now. But they still got to have you come in and get the vitamin. Hey, we do the triiodine. We get it. But this is a direct competition for what is really the info war, and people are basically listening, and they're paying attention now, because we're going to give them the straight dope. Okay. And these other guys, they're just bullshitting. They're bullshitting. They're not going to talk about it. They'll give you some interesting stuff, and they're fast on the news clips. I like to listen to get up on the news clips, and I'll put them on here and drop them for you. But at the end of the day, they're not really going to give you the full scope of what's going on, because ultimately it's not just about blaming Jews, blaming the state of Israel, and somehow fighting the deep state. And these are just anonymous shadowy characters. We're going to name names. We're going to get to the bottom of the thing.
Now, I want to close with two things. One is, some of you may have heard of a particularly creepy individual still alive today named Michael Aquino. He is the head of the Temple of Set, which is the most one of the most influential satanic groups of the 20th and 21st century. It was an offshoot of the Church of Satan, and it's much smaller than the other bodies, but it's very creepy. And he basically worships Set, this Egyptian demon, god-headed, a dog-headed deity, okay? And he also, in his writings, and I used to read this guy's stuff because I thought he was great when I was a devil worshiper. He talks all the time, and it's documented in many places, and also in my book, Masonry Beyond the Light, that the five-pointed star, and especially the inverted five-pointed star, the Eastern Star, is the star of Set. It's the star of Sirius. It's this dark, powerful occult energy. So both a 19th century occult master and a 20th/21st century occult master agree. This thing is evil, and if you have sworn an oath at that altar of the evil star, you need to get out of that thing, renounce it, you need to repent it. And that's what I will end up by saying. I kind of went over this quickly in the beginning, but if you are an Eastern Star woman, or if you're an Eastern Star guy, and also a Mason, I would assume, you need to renounce it. You need to get down on your knees right now and pray to Moshiach and just renounce all the oaths that you have taken. Ask him, our master, to forgive you for taking those oaths. And if you go onto our website, we have a prayer of deliverance that you need to go through. It's called Deliverance Procedure. It's under Deliverance and Liberation, which is a sub-menu under prayers. And it mentions there the strongmen of Masonry, because there are demonic strongmen for Masonry. Things like Baphomet, Nimrod, and Javelin, and again, Baal, and Hiram Abiff, and so on. You need to renounce those strong men. You need to renounce the oaths that you took. Then, having done that, and again, whether you're the husband or the wife, or whether you're a single man or a single woman that's involved in the Star or the Masons, you need to renounce it. If you have any bric-a-brac or paraphernalia, aprons or rings or jewelry or documents, you need to burn them or destroy them. Get them out of your house. I don't care if to take them out in the woods and bury them in a ditch. Get rid of them. And then you need to send a letter. If you're a woman, you would send it to the Grand Chapter of the Eastern Star in whatever state you live in. If you're a guy, you need to send it to the Grand Chapter of the Eastern Star, but also to the Grand Lodge of the Freemasons, to which you may be beholden in the state you're in. And if either of these individuals are in other Masonic bodies, they need to, because there's several women's organizations, like the Daughters of the Nile, which is like for the Shriners, stuff like that. And for the men, there are 4 or 5 different organizations you can be a part of. So understand me, this is critically important. You need to spiritually sever ties, and then by writing a letter, you legally sever the ties. Because if you send them a letter, they are pretty much obligated, a letter of demit, legally, to take your name off the rolls of the Masonic Order.
It's very fascinating, and something we'll come to observe, that those ancient orders of esoteric, religio-cultic veneration and ritualism, they would also separate the men and women into different groups, into different separate divisions, and most notably is the practice of Babylonian Baal worship that was being executed in Israel in the ancient historical landscape of antiquity, right? There was Jezebel. Famously, Jezebel was practicing the ancient Baal worship and the worship of an Ashtaroth, right? Which was at that time the modern iteration of the ancient Nimrod and Semiramis cult that was started, maybe 600 years before that. Who was also named Ninus, who was the founder of Babel and Nineveh, these ancient cities. And so along those lines of separating the male and female and decorating them with black and white colors and opposite forces, and charging them with magical fields of influence over their being, and that was part of their belief system. So this was the same kind of practice that Jezebel was resurrecting and bringing to life. And she had her priests of Baal and her priestess of Asherah decorated in black and white. And you can go look that up in scriptures. And so this is the kind of ancient, esoteric, magical ritual practice that we will encounter from time to time. And you can see it's similar to what you have in Roman Catholicism, where they separate the men and the women from the priests to the nuns, and then, have them supposedly be celibate, even though there's a massive, huge, astonishing, scandalous outbreak of child sex pedophilia, which I guess there's no thing as child sex, right? It's just child rape, child abuse that goes on in Romanism, and of course that's also taking place with Islam. Many varieties and brands of Islam are separating the men and the women. The women have to set apart. They have to be colored in black and white, distinct colors, etc. And ultimately there's just a substantial ingrained culture of child rape and abuse over with Islam as well. And it's just bizarre, weird cultural blindness and defunct human taboo that just likes to throw homosexuals off of buildings, but then at the same time have bocce boys as like a normal part of, don't say anything about that. It's just the normal thing that they do. Like, oh okay. So just, it's a bizarre, hypocritical inconsistency, and it's just the root of superstition and the banality of religious despotism and the emptiness of profane, caveman-like level of ignorance, I guess. So we'll have to get into it here. I mean, I believe all the things that you hear me discuss, and many things we discuss I don't believe in, right? Of course, but we have to. We're at a desperate measures trying to plug the holes in this sinking ship, and we're in an existential struggle for the future. And we have to get it right. It's not enough just to band together for the sake of the nation. We have to band together for the sake of God and for the truth of this religious struggle that America represents. America is represented in its fabric and in the core of the definition of its very being, the struggle between not left and right, which is just kind of made up Hegelian dynamics of political antagonism and warfare. I'm talking about between the victims of the outrageous barbarism of popery and those who have been the champions of supporting it and egging it on, and those who were stood aside and relished and watched as Huguenots were burned alive, and whole families and the fabric and psyche of the human spiritual being was forever fractured and dissolved and destroyed and wounded and scarred. And so now that we're at this future point, those old scars and those old broken stepping stones that led us to where we are historically are not gone, and they haven't been dealt with. So we're not just going to go and just wear a Trump hat and just go and say Merry Christmas with everyone else and just join in with the one world Vatican religious system at the United Nations, right? We're not going to do it. It's not going to happen, guys. We're going to protest. We're Protestants, and we're going to hold good and hold true to our name.